Returning from the summit of NATO's eastern flank countries, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk once again attacked the Polish president, claiming that Karol Nawrocki is not cooperating with the government and is allegedly undermining the authority of the Polish government in international politics. The problem for Donald Tusk is that despite his many attempts to whitewash reality, it is clear to everyone that it is the head of the government who is persona non grata at international meetings. Moreover, it is no secret that Donald Tusk, by attacking the US president, is himself responsible for the opinion in which he has held in global circles. Prime Minister Donald Tusk, returning from the summit of NATO's eastern flank countries in Finland, said, "President Nawrocki and his entourage are effectively refusing to cooperate on foreign policy, and it's not just about the G20. Almost every day I encounter attempts by someone from the president's entourage to undermine the authority of the Polish government and of Poland." Complete nonsense. Does this make the Prime Minister stronger? No. It confirms his reputation, which he established permanently by pointing two fingers behind President Trump's back, and later confirmed on the European stage, as you remember, when he was politely asked to travel in a different train carriage to Ukraine. This is not the first time we have heard the Prime Minister's words aimed at the President, especially when the government is not doing particularly well on the international stage. Donald Tusk has made attacks on the president his method of political conflict. He has failed to keep his promises, and his coalition partners are practically exhausted. Therefore, in order to remain relevant on the political scene, he has adopted a tactic of attacking the president at all costs, even at the expense of Poland. We asked members of Donald Tusk's coalition about his words. Maybe the government should take half a step back. This is precisely the kind of thinking where people always say, they are to blame, let the government take half a step back. I believe that if the president took that step, it would be for the sake of the security and set a good example. I don't think Prime Minister Donald Tusk is attacking the president. The president should be with the government on the issue of Ukraine, together with our postulates here. Some of the Prime Minister Tusk's intentions may be surprising. I see it as an appeal to shape foreign policy internally, but in such a way that it speaks with one voice. I see it as meaning that there must be daily or regular consultation between the presidential palace and the government. In this case, I see that for the purposes of international politics here in our country, Donald Tusk has decided to make the president a punchbag. The truth is that this government is terrible and fails time and time again. When it turns out that the United States is taking some action that should prompt the Polish government to act, the government pushes the president aside. When the president visits Washington and achieves concrete success, Donald Tusk tries to take credit for those successes. It's pretty grotesque. The Marshal of the Sejm, a post-communist, has only one recipe for remedying the situation: present the same position as the government. If this order is established and maintained, we will have no conflict. Prime Minister Donald Tusk has done everything to weaken the president's position because he is currently the only person who represents us with dignity on the international stage. Of course, the government should be doing this, but this government is not capable of it. Interestingly, on his way to the summit in Berlin on peace in Ukraine, Prime Minister Tusk himself assessed with disarming honesty the real place of Polish diplomacy in the war caused by Putin. Of course, our influence is limited. We know how important the players are in this game. It turns out that Prime Minister Donald Tusk has no influence on many issues discussed at this meeting, but he is trying, for the sake of Polish politics, to show that he does have some influence. However, it seems that not everyone in the coalition understood the Prime Minister's words on the way to Berlin, or they understood them in their own way. I have the impression that the opposite is true, that if there are attacks, they are directed at Prime Minister Tusk. This is not just an impression, but a certainty. Contrary to what he said, that no one can outplay him in Europe, or that he knows European affairs, it turns out that today European leaders do not invite him to the most important negotiating tables. This is Donald Tusk's modus operandi. He is unable to solve the real problems of Poles, so he wants to create spectacles and attack his political opponents. At the moment, he is attacking President Nawrocki. The thing is, the problems of Polish diplomacy regarding Ukraine only began after the coalition led by Donald Tusk came to power. When I was Prime Minister, we managed to force Germany to make a much greater contribution in the early stages of the war in Ukraine. We finally managed to get the Leopard tanks, because it wasn't easy, travelling to various capitals and getting those tanks to defend ourselves against the Russians. Unfortunately, Donald Tusk is not a partner on the international stage. He brought this on himself. Poland's starting position was very good. We were one of the main players in Central and Eastern Europe, in terms of the idea for Ukraine, in terms of the country without which it is impossible to help Ukraine. Donald Tusk squandered all of this. Today, Polish President Karol Nawrocki is the only person who can ensure good relations between Poland and the largest and strongest NATO country, the United States. Donald Tusk is a burden not only in our relations with the United States, which requires no proof, but he is also a burden for Europeans who are conducting fundamental negotiations on the future of Ukraine, but also for Europe in its relations with the United States. Because it's not particularly good to be seen with such leaders, even in photographs.